One of the first things you do when you're taking a client on as a business coach is to say, where's your numbers? Let's have a look at them. What are you doing? And it was amazing how many people either didn't have them or said their accountant had them. So we were looking at numbers that were so far out of date, it was embarrassing. It was just something that really upset me. I would say that if anybody is in that situation, the way they want to start a business together, you have to have very clear idea of what your roles are, and you have to have very clear ideas on what your business patterns of working are, and you need to make sure that you respect the skills of the other part of the partnership.
Yeah, my other bit of advice is get a dog. Because actually, if all else, the fact that I walk the dog first thing in the morning, and actually it's possibly the most important part of my day, because I wake up in the morning with all these thoughts going on in my head, but actually by the time I've walked the dog, I've taken those thoughts and I've distilled them down to a plan.
Hello and welcome to the Business Growth Show.
I'm John from Octopus Computers.
And I'm Adam from Active Internet Marketing.
This is the show where we sit down with business owners, founders and entrepreneurs from Stamford and the Greater Rutland area.
We discuss their journey, look at their wins and their challenges, and get practical advice that you can apply.
New episodes come out fortnightly, so if you want to stay up to date, drop us a follow or subscribe wherever you're listening.
Welcome to the Business Growth Show, Rupert and Angela. First of all, I'd like you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your business.
Cool. So I'm Angela Turtton. We are Blue Dragonfly Group. My part of the business is accountancy. That's my background. And I help business owners actually sort out the rubbish in their systems, set up a system that they can actually use, and then either work with them moving forward to keep their systems clean, or hand over to a bookkeeper something that they can actually take forward and use properly, because so many businesses don't have a grip on their numbers.
Right.
They don't know what their critical numbers are. If you don't know what your critical numbers are, how on earth are you going to move forward? How are you going to grow your business? Or if you're not interested in growth, how are you just going to keep going to what you want to go for? So yeah, that's just such an important part of it. And we found, certainly in the last few years, how few businesses actually have knowledge of what their numbers are. And it's not just the numbers you find in your set of accounts that your compliance accountant will produce for you, but it's also the numbers that show the activity as well. And we can help them work out how to do that.
Brilliant.
And then I'm Rupert Turtton. So as you probably realise, we're married, but also we're business partners as well. So I'm of Blue Dragonfly Group. I'm Blue Dragonfly Services. So we've realised over time that there's an awful lot of business owners and business leaders out there who know they need to make change inside their business, but they don't have the time or sometimes the skills to do it themselves. So what we're going to do is we deliver that change for them. So we deliver it as a project. So we'll go in, we'll work out what they want the business to become, where they want to take it. We'll work out what the plan to achieve that goal is, and then I'll manage the plan for them. So from the business owner's point of view, they can go off and run the business and the stuff that they're good at, but knowing that the change they need in their business to allow their business to move forward is still taking place, as opposed to being stuck in the day-to-day, being stuck in the quagmire, spinning their wheels and going nowhere. They actually know that their business is positioning itself ready to move forward.
Excellent. And can you both individually, we'll start with Angela first, perhaps, tell us a little bit about your career history that's led you on a path so that you can have that ability to help these businesses today?
So this is where a checkered past comes in handy, because you can do virtually everything. So I qualified as an accountant in 1992, and so I've been doing this for a long while, and have at that stage I was working for a small firm that I qualified with. I went into industry for a little while. I've worked in internal audit for a while, and I've set up an internal audit department. And then I've worked back in industry in businesses. And then when my children got to the stage where they weren't dependent on me quite so much, I set my own practice up. So for 10 years, I had my own small practice where we were living in Berkshire, and ran that as a business, but also worked with an awful lot of SMEs, helping them to do the compliance work and get their accounts done. I sold that business. It became apparent that I either needed to bring on a partner to help me because we were getting too big for me to do it just on my own, or to sell it. And because of where we were in our private lives with children having grown up and left home, we were then thinking, well, what do we do next? So the decision was to sell it prior to us moving from Berkshire into the Midlands. So while we were waiting to move, I then did some consultancy, so particularly helping heart-centred businesses set up their processes. Quite a lot of, especially therapists, go into business because they are really loving what they do and they really care for the people, and they often find that they don't want to earn any money, and so we try to help them with that whole mindset again do that. When we moved up here, we set up a coaching business under Action Coach banner, and so came again in contact with an awful lot of small businesses running owner-managed businesses. And one of the things that I found really, really frustrating was the lack of numbers, knowledge within those businesses that we were working with. And one of the first things you do when you're taking a client on as a business coach is to say, where's your numbers? Let's have a look at them. What are you doing? And it was amazing how many people either didn't have them or said their accountant had them. So we were looking at numbers that were so far out of date, it was embarrassing. And we just, it was just something that really upset me. What upset me even more was finding that actually when we looked into these numbers, some of the accountants that they were working with didn't understand the business. So you'd have a set of compliance accounts which were largely right, but actually that wasn't reflected back, and the business owners weren't being helped to run their business by their compliance accountants. So I set up Blue Dragonfly Insights 3 years ago now, just to help sort that out. We kept it separately, partly because of compliance issues with the institute and the regulations, money laundering, anti-money laundering regulations, and just so that we could keep it as a separate thing. But now that Rupert has joined me in the Blue Dragonfly Group to extend what we're doing, we've come together a little bit more as a entity. So he's going to take the number knowledge and move forward. But partly because I've done almost everything within accountancy, apart from something like mergers and acquisitions, which is very specialised, I have got the knowledge that what the compliance accountants do and what they do, and what people in industry do and need. So actually it's sort of like sitting in the middle and sometimes interpreting that between the business owner and the compliance accountant.
A huge wealth of experience in accountancy then, and across varying sort of aspects to give everything that they could potentially need support for, certainly from an SME or medium-sized business.
Exactly. And because I've run my own business, I know the numbers that you need. Because we did the coaching, I know it's not all about numbers. It's not all about cost. So, for example, quite a lot of compliance accountants will say that marketing and advertising is a cost, whereas we see it very much as an investment. And it's something that if you're not doing, then you're not doing it, and then probably not going to survive as a business. And also salespeople, so finance people and salespeople have this love-hate relationship. Probably seen it in your own businesses, where the salespeople are real optimists, and they really want to go for it and do a lot. Whereas the finance people are like holding it back, and you have to say, look, nothing happens until somebody sells. Absolutely. Get out there and allow them to do that. So it is an interesting balancing act sometimes.
Definitely.
So there's like 100 questions I want to ask you about that, but I'm really conscious that you're also sat to someone we haven't asked yet. So, Rupert, can you tell us a bit about how you got into it and your history before where you are at the moment?
Yeah. I mean, so my career has been in IT. fundamentally. So if you go back far enough, I was an engineer, but in the days when computers were the size of a fridge, I mean, it was they were big machines, not what we're used to these days. And then I moved into management. So I've done various management roles, from IT manager, global strategy manager. A lot of my career actually was in project and program management, which is a lot of how my thinking works as well. So I'm very structured in the way I approach most problems. I like to have a plan. I was also a bid manager for a while. So the bid managers are the people who pursue the big deals in IT businesses. So effectively, it's project management on steroids, because instead of having something like 6 months to a year to deliver a project, actually all of a sudden you've got to do the whole thing in 6 weeks. So it's a very different skill set, but fantastic learning ground. But then I've had since then I've looked up being portfolio lead for when I was at Hewlett Packard. Portfolio lead for workplace, which is basically everything you've got on your desk. It's your laptop, your PC, your phone, your mobile phone. It's the support services that surround it. So and it's quite a varied career as well. And I've worked for everything from small UK startups where 3 or 4 people to start with, and we've grown those right through to obviously as I've got more senior, the companies I work for have to be bigger at the same time as well. So quite a varied career.
And then how did you get into the consultancy coaching piece? Why was that the next logical step? To shift from effectively employment to taking it all on yourself is quite a big step.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually it wasn't as big as it sounds. So consultancy, I've been working for consultancy businesses, employed to work for consultancy businesses, and ran one for a while as well. So that wasn't a big step for me. The coaching, so I was one of the liverymen of the Welshpool Company of Management Consultants. So in the City of London, they have the livery companies, which are really like the old trade organisations. Right. And literally, I mean, the butchers, the bakers, candlestick makers, but there's also the management consultants. And as part of our giving back to the city, we used to coach the CEOs of charities. And as part of doing that, of course, that was actually my first coaching training, actually being taught how to coach. And also when I did my PMP accreditation, so in the UK, everybody knows about Prince 2 for project management, but actually I needed to be globally recognised. So I am a project management professional, which is part of the Project Management Institute, which is the global organisation. Is that really complex?
I followed, but only because I'm also a nerd. But yeah, it's fine.
But actually, as part of that, they talk a lot about management in the training as well. And part of that, of course, is, if you like, there's 3 elements to management. There's the management telling people what to do. There's the leadership telling them why they're doing it. And there's also the working out how they're going to do it, which is effectively coaching. So I've been doing coaching sort of gradually over the years. And then when I left HP, it was like, what am I going to do next? And Angela actually met one of the local coaches and said, oh, you should have a chat with these guys, which, and pretty much everything else followed from that. And I have to say, I mean, it's a new skill set, but actually the experience was just fantastic. Yeah, so much knowledge we've taken from that.
And it was a stepping stone as well, wasn't it? From being employed by a big corporation to being employed by yourself, because although we had our own business, we were part of this fantastic community that was so supportive and really helpful. So we had that backup that we could fall back on if we needed to. So it's a sort of little bit of a
good segue, isn't it? That sort of transition.
I think it worked quite well.
So a huge amount of experience then that you've both got that you can offer to people old nowadays. I didn't say a thing. But what I was going to ask, really keen to understand, who would be your ideal client or the type of business that you do and would love to work with today? Can you tell us who you're really kind of trying to seek out? And
can we answer that in 2 halves, actually?
Yeah, great.
My ideal client and Angela's are slightly different.
Absolutely.
From my perspective, I think because of my background, but I love technology clients, and that's obviously IT is really interesting. Where we're going with AI and all of that is just fascinating, but also engineering and those sort of things are really interesting to me. But I think more importantly, it's having the challenge in the business. But
and size, location.
Yeah, I was going to say, so size-wise, it's hard to put a revenue value on it, but realistically, we want to be working with people who are turning over more than £1 million a year, and they need to have a reasonable sized team. Doesn't need to be enormous, but somewhere around 10 people upwards is sort of the people. They're going to be big enough that they've got a successful business, but they know to make the next step, they need to be working with somebody to get them to the next place.
Is that because of how much harder management gets above a dozen headcount? Or is there a certain tipping point where suddenly they need additional skills?
Both, actually. So management changes, I think, when you get to a certain size. When you've got a small business, you can be everywhere. And in fact, the guy I was talking to yesterday has exactly this problem. So his business has grown quite considerably. For probably the last 10 years, he could pretty much know everybody in his business and know what they were doing day to day. And he's now got to the point where he's expanding beyond that. And he actually he can't be everywhere. He can't talk to all his guys. He can't talk to all his customers on a day-to-day basis. So he's got to start putting that structure in place, which means he's got to start transferring the knowledge that's in his head down to his staff. So they've got to know, actually, the first thing they've got to know is where's the business going, how are we going to get there. They've also got to understand how they're expected to work day to day. And he's starting to, and he's done some great work already, by the way, but on processizing his business as well. So actually, each of his teams know what to do under certain conditions. So yes, he's pulling all that together. And I think a lot of that, as you say, is it's got to a size where he has to change the way he manages the business. He's also got to learn the skills to be able to manage the business in the new way.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yes.
That's right.
Another complex answer.
That's good. We like that.
Yeah.
And Angela, what about you? Who are your ideal clients?
So I love a challenge when it comes to accounts. So the messier, the better. But it does need to have some purpose to what we're doing. So just clearing up mess for mess sake is just not worth it. But actually, if you've got a system, and we've seen it quite a lot recently, where the CRM system doesn't talk. It says it talks to the accounting practice, to the accounting softwares like Xero or somewhere, but actually when you actually look at what comes through, it is a little mess, and so sorting out that, trying to get that right, is something that's quite. It's great when you've got the system and suddenly there is order and calm, and it's like, yeah, I know what to do, and I'm not particularly good when it's calm and everything is done. It's sort of like, right, okay, that's the stage where you pass it over to a bookkeeper who can be very consistently getting it right all the time.
Are
it
they
gets
a particular size of organisation that you find, or
no, I mean they've got to have a certain
traits that are consistent, or
a certain number of transactions need to be going through. So usually, again, that's probably the same sort of size that Rupert was talking about in terms of business. But if that 1 million is like 5 different invoices, there's no challenge there. You know, if that's all there is in that million, then you know, actually it's a really easy bookkeeping system, and then you're moving on to doing almost like a fractional FD work where you're actually being in the business and helping interpret the numbers, and I love that as well. So it's the two things. So let's get the mess sorted, and then let's go on to actually be that finance sane person at the board table who actually is giving advice on your cash flow, you need to do something here, or interpreting the numbers for those people. And I do think it's a bit like coaching, that you need to get to a point where they are independent of you, where you have given them the systems that work, and where they know enough, they know as much as you do, so that you know that you then continue to work together because you want to work together, rather than because you need to work. They need you in that situation, so that and they appreciate my expertise. So that's where we need to get to, and it is a question of actually making. I don't want to be working with somebody who's dependent upon me. I want them to become interdependent around it.
And that's why when we set Blue Dragonfly Group up, I mean, fundamentally we said we're going to work in 3 ways. One is consultancy, which is, if you like, going in and sorting out the mess in the first place. The second is then fractional, i.e. we go in once a week or once a couple of times a month, whatever the duration needs to be, what's appropriate for that business. And then the third is facilitation as well. So actually just going in and maybe chairing the board meeting or chairing one of the team meetings or whatever, so to make sure that things are progressing in the right direction. So if you like, there's three elements to what we're setting up with Blue Dragonfly Group as well.
Chairing a meeting is actually a real skill, which is sometimes not the first one.
It's not taught, that's for sure. No one teaches you how to approach it. What would be your tips to someone who's going to chair their first board meeting? What would you suggest?
What would I say? Have an agenda.
Yep.
Yeah.
Know what it is. Publish that in advance. Get people to put anything in there, and not have the pre-meeting meetings. You know, if somebody comes to you, I've got a problem. Bring it to the meeting. You know, make sure that meeting is valuable. Stick to time, because otherwise people hate it, and make sure everybody has a voice, because when you're chairing a meeting, it's not necessarily there's three reasons why you might have, maybe four, you might have a meeting. One is to get information, one is to make a decision, one is to give information out. So you have to be clear on which of those three you're doing, and then you can go and say, right, actually, this meeting is for this purpose. Everybody knows what it is, but you're not having little meetings before the meetings to you know, gang up.
The pre-meeting ramble
yeah,
that takes 20 minutes. And,
a bit like the Traitors or something, where you're trying to you know,
People conspiring
together, and this is what we're going to do. So you know, and also the person who speaks the loudest and has the most to say doesn't necessarily have the most pertinent thing to say.
Yeah.
So making sure that everybody has a voice is useful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I hope you're enjoying today's episode. Please remember to like, give us a rating, give us a follow and subscribe wherever you're listening if you're enjoying the show.
And then we've heard from you about your experience and the systems and your knowledge in that area. And there's obviously a lot to offer there to people. I wanted to try and understand from you both individually, you do it in whichever order you prefer. But do you feel what would be a big thing that would appeal to potential clients about the way you personally work? So, you know, I think with people who are working with a coach or an advisor, consultant, their personality often is a big reason of why they choose that person. Their kind of work style is either appealing or it's not. What do you think would be appealing to potential clients about each of you individually in your personal approach?
So I'm quite structured in the way I approach work. And if we look at personality types in what we do as well, and actually if you look at what I do, I'm very task orientated.
Right.
I have to remember to be nice to people, but work should be fun. At the end of the day, you're going to be at work for at least 8 hours a day, every day, which is pretty much half of your waking time. You need to be having fun during that time. It shouldn't be 8 hours of misery. So remember, it's fun. Remember that people are going to want to have a chat during the day as well, and you need to talk about things beyond work. So it's something, you need to talk about, I don't know, the football or the theatre last night, or the film you went to see. Have those conversations as well. But actually, it's being personable, but being focused at the same time. And I will, in the middle of a meeting, will go back to the original question, just to make sure, because actually in my head, okay, for us to move forward, this is what needs to happen. And actually, you know, sometimes when you're talking to somebody, they want to go and talk about all the things that surround it. You've still got to get to what's the next action going.
So I guess it could be somebody who's also quite task orientated would be a good fit for you, but also potentially if they struggle with that,
Need the structure.
and they need the structure, then that could be a good fit for you as well.
I'd say actually, yeah, the people, if you look at most successful businesses, I mean, actually Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer are a great example at Microsoft. Bill Gates, great on ideas, getting things started. Steve Ballmer was the guy who put everything together. He was the guy who made it happen. He was the detail person. Most businesses have that relationship going at the top of the organisation. Somebody who's having great ideas and driving the business forward, and somebody else who is taking those ideas, putting the detail in, and actually making sure they happen. And so actually I work very well with either the people who are having the great ideas, or sometimes you get with business owners, you get this personality where it's not so much they have the ideas, but they see something they want to do. They forget about the detail underneath it. It's like, this is what we're going to do, and they go off. They're on to the next project, and they need somebody who, if you like, following in their wake to actually implement that project as well.
Yeah.
I think that's quite difficult for people to actually achieve in their business, because most people I know who sort of go, I'm going to start this, I've got this dream, they're drawn to people similar to them.
Oh, yeah.
And they end up surrounding themselves with people who agree, but none of them are necessarily action-oriented, or they're all, I work in tech, so if they're all developers, none of them know how to sell or market.
Yep.
So you often find a small team of all the same personalities. How do you then go in there and, for lack of a phrase, shake it up a bit?
And actually, you raised a really good point there as well, because actually not everybody is suited to every job. And actually, IT is a great example. So most people in IT are really focused, task-orientated. Their idea of happiness is to be locked in a darkened room for 2 weeks and to get on with a project. Actually, talking to people isn't for them. But then on the opposite end of that spectrum, you get salespeople to a degree, although salespeople are becoming increasingly logically based.
Process
but actually they need to be talking to people. Lock in a room for 2 weeks, they would go mad. They need to be out and they need to be talking to people. But then there's also, you can learn the skills as well. So because naturally I'm task orientated, actually naturally quite conservative. I have spent my life making big changes in businesses and having to communicate with people on a day-to-day basis. So a lot of my communication skills are learnt skills. So you can teach people those skills. I think you have to, the first thing is to understand where you are and the sort of person you are. And the second thing is then to understand the person you're working with and how you need to communicate with them. A great book to read. I don't know if you do book recommendations.
We can do now.
I've never seen one before. Surrounded by Idiots.
I'm not. They watch. Then I'm not. No.
You and Farmer Adam can have that conversation. Yes. But it's a great book to read. If you just, it's using something called DISC, so it's very much. DISC is lovely because it's a very simple system to understand at the high level. But actually, if you really get into it, it goes down into an awful lot of detail about people's personality types. But actually, if you want to get that snapshot of who you're working with and work out where you are and where your colleagues are, it's a really good book to read, and it's quite readable as well.
And Angela, on the back of those sort of different people like different things, do you think finance is often left to the end? Because I don't think people get into business so they can do the books. And I don't think they may think they get into it to make money, but it's often the skill that is lacking the most. Is that true, or is there...
To an extent, again, it does depend a little bit on personality types. There are people who decide they're going to start a business and they get everything done except for the marketing and the sales. So they've got their books all perfect. They've got their letterhead. They've got their logo, but actually they haven't got
client.
So you've got those people, but I think also, most people, especially when they start off, they have an idea and they think, right, I'm going to, and they have, in order for that to be successful, they have to be a little bit single-minded. And actually, the bookkeeping can wait. It's not one of those things that has to happen immediately, unless it's the 29th of January and you need to do your tax return, in which case people panic. But I think the other thing is that people rely too heavily on their bookkeeper and their compliance accountant to actually give them the figures. And that can be the same person, or it can be, different people. And if they haven't got an understanding of what that is, then that's where things go wrong, because they get whatever they get. 9 months later, they actually don't understand. And if you dig into your numbers, I think you can see, and again, it is personality driven. Some people hate it and won't touch it with a barge pole. Other people realise how important it is and train themselves, even if they don't like numbers, to do it. And I think our school days have a lot to answer for here, because a lot of people have been told at school that they are either good at maths or they're good at English, and nobody's good at both.
Never the twain shall meet.
No, right? Exactly. And that's just not true. And I think what we as a profession have been a little bit guilty of is adding some mystique around finance for business, certainly, so that you have these strange and words that you never see in English anywhere else, like amortization and depreciation and all these lovely words that people don't understand, and yet we throw them around quite happily. And even things like profit and loss, income and expenditure statements, general public don't actually understand what that is. So why should Why should we get away with that? And that's why, coming back to what your question was, is that I talk in plain English most of the time.
Yeah.
I do sometimes slip into the speak, but I don't get. I'm not very good with initials, so EBITDA. I have to keep thinking, what does that actually mean? Earning before, and I have to say it to myself because I don't get
It's
it.
the DAL I always forget. I always have to try and remember the big words at the end.
And so, whereas Rupert is quite good with those sort of things, but I just don't get them. So I don't use them. I don't use that word. So I sort of talk about, the money in your pocket rather than profit. And I think that's what people like, because they actually understand it.
And I think with any business, you've got to bear in mind, every business is in business to make a profit.
Yeah.
And then their profit breaks down into really two halves, doesn't it? So what's your revenue coming into the business and what are your costs? And so you have to control those to make a profit. So understanding those numbers is absolutely key, which is exactly what Angela does. And then around that, it's actually, so what's your plan? How are you going to make a profit? What sales activity do you have to do? What marketing activity do you have to do? Actually, where you're trying to take the business in the first place. Actually, how do you want to run your business? What's your leadership? What's your management style? And then all the things that start to feed into that, putting that plan together. So actually, which parts of the business should we systemize? If we're going to systemize the business and we're going to keep our staff up to date, what education are they going to need? And then having done all that, actually, what's the organization structure of our business? And actually how we are structured today might not be how we need to be structured. Oops, let's mess the mic up. How we're going to be structured in a year's time, because we know we're going to change the size, the shape of the business. And then underneath that, of course, what's the governance that has to sit around the business? But having the exercise of going through and putting that plan together and actually thinking about where the business is going is just so valuable. And then, of course, once you've got a plan, there's so many people doing this fantastic plan. How many people have got a business plan which they wrote because the bank required them to do it for something, 5 years or a year ago, and they just put it in the top drawer of their desk and never looked at it since? If you're going to go to the effort of putting a plan together, you've also got to execute on that plan as well, which is really what Blue Dragonfly Business Services is all set up to do. Put the plan together, make sure you deliver that plan, so actually you get the results you're expecting from a profitability point of view.
Definitely. And in terms of that plan and getting to that starting point where you're going to move on from, if somebody gets introduced to you, or perhaps they're watching this and they hear of you for the first time, what's your process? Do you meet with them initially and talk about some of what they're aiming to achieve, or tell us a little bit about that? From
a process point of view, first thing we're going to do is just have a chat, because we actually need to see if there's anything we can do for them in the first place. So we're very likely going to start with probably like this, actually, sit next to around a table, have a coffee, talk about the business.
Lights,
We'll record it all. Just so that we can play it back later.
But so sit down and really understand the business and what they're trying to achieve, because there's no point us taking them further into the conversation if we can't help. But after that, the next thing we're going to do is sit down with them and do a scoping meeting to actually work out what they need to do in their business. And at that point, we're really getting to the point we know we can do something or we can't do something. So that's when we start engaging. And the first thing we're going to do is put a plan together of what needs to happen. So if we know where the business is going, we know the strategies they're going to use to achieve that goal, and we can then look at the milestones along the way. We can build a plan underneath that for exactly how we're going to deliver. And I think you've also got to remember with plans that they're a living, breathing thing as well. So actually what looks great when you're doing it in January, you might get to June and find something has changed. Either something in your business has changed or something in your market has changed. So much is going to change. So you've got to be constantly looking at what's going on around you at the same time. But then put the plan together, obviously working out the finances behind it, because everything has a cost associated with it. And that's really where we get back into Angela's territory, and particularly around cash flow. Because if you're doing a big project and it means you've got to go and buy an expensive piece of equipment, I mean, builders are a great example of this. They if you're building a house, for example, the builder very early on in the project has to go and buy all the materials, which is a big outlay. He's then continually got to pay his team to do the building, and realistically, he may not get paid for 9 months down the line until the house is finished. So he's got to think about his cash flow through that time and how he's going to manage that cash flow to make sure he doesn't basically go bust before he finishes the project. So you've got to think about your cash flow and understand where your finances are. Then once we understand the finances, we can put the really detailed plan together. And when I say detailed, it's every activity being less than 2 weeks in duration. So actually you don't have anything that's running on too long. So you've got something you can accurately monitor day to day. And then, of course, it's execution of that plan, which a lot of it is talking to the people doing the work. Actually, how's this going? Is that going well? Did you finish that activity? And really just tying it all together.
Brilliant.
Taking a big tangent away from what you actually do.
Yep.
I'm really curious to know how you find working and living together. Because for a lot of people, the thought of working with their partner fills them with a cold sense of dread. Not me, fortunately. She watches, I swear.
Yeah.
But I know that a lot of people don't like that idea or would find it difficult to separate work and life balance.
Yeah.
How do you find it?
I think in the very beginning when we started our business together, it was difficult. We had both had quite extensive periods of our career beforehand. We had our ways of working. We did talk about, certain things beforehand about what we wanted to do. We sort of had a little bit of an idea. The reality was quite difficult, I must say. And one of the things that I found incredibly helpful was that we both had a coach, and we were able to talk to the coach about
Working with each other.
And there were times, there were weeks where, she just was on the other end of the phone, just listening to me going, and it's done this again. But
What are you talking about?
Obviously not you.
Yeah.
And I think, in times of stress, that sometimes comes back a little bit. But actually, we have the same priorities. And that became we did a questionnaire about strengths and about our values. And we have the same values. We have the same priorities. We are both very family orientated. We both put our family before anything else. So I think once you have bedded out all those little irritations of the fact that, Rupert gets up very early and is a morning person, and I don't really get my brain in gear until 10 o'clock. So, once all that has been ironed out and we've got past that stage, we were able to. And also I think the coaching that we did and that we had, with other people helped us to find the language that we needed to talk to each other. So, for example, there's a great phrase that is in the book Sumo, another good book recommendation for you.
Great book.
About hippo time, when you're upset and you just want to wallow for a minute.
Right.
So,
that.
being in hippo time is obviously needs to be comparable to the problem that you've got. But if I just said to Rupert, "Leave me alone, I'm in hippo time," he would understand that, and he would go off rather because he's task orientated. Quite often he would want to find a solution to my...
How can I help? How can I fix it?
Yes, but actually I didn't want it fixed. I knew what I was doing. I just needed to stew for a little bit. Yeah. So things like that language that we have now got has helped. I think the fact that we do now have grandchildren has helped, in that we both are very focused on our extended family now, and making sure that they are our priority has really helped. So yeah, it's... It was difficult, and I would say that if anybody is in that situation, the way they want to start a business together, you have to have a very clear idea of what your roles are, and you have to have very clear ideas on what your business patterns of working are, and you need to make sure that you respect the skills of the other part of the partnership.
I think that's really good advice for anyone in any business partnership, as well as a marriage partnership as well, it seems as well. So like you said, we've already demonstrated you both got very different skill sets, but they're very complementary, but they're not exactly the same. You actually got different strengths, and then they're aligned in your morals and your thinking and everything aside of that as well. So yeah, very good. I
think it is, and it is up to the individual person. I have heard of if you're working at home, perhaps both of you, I've heard of somebody who had different table mats. So when the black table mats were out, they could talk business. But if they were away and the red table mats were out, it's home time and no business was talked about. So it's having those sort of rules of the game almost that
clear divide.
Clear
between work
divide.
and life.
Fairly early on, when we were working together, we realised that we were having conversations over dinner, and nothing was happening. Because we'd have the conversation, we have quite detailed conversations, but because neither of us were sitting there making notes and writing minutes, nothing ever came out of it. So we've realised over time that we have to have, as any business would actually, we have to have our business meeting. So every Monday morning at 10 o'clock, we get together and have our business meeting, which is when we talk about the business and what's happened and what needs to happen to drive the business forward. Regardless, even we might have had the conversation on Saturday night, but actually we revisit it on a Monday morning just to make sure we've driven the actions out of it as well. And then but the contrary to that, there's also actually respecting each other's time, because Angela will quite happily talk about business all evening. I'm having my dinner. I do not want to talk about business, so it's very different. But once you understand that, but it took us a while to get there as well, didn't it?
And I think partly because I'd been self-employed before, and it had been my own business, so it was constantly in my head. Yeah. And the only time I could talk to Rupert about it was, it wasn't his business, but if I wanted to talk to him about it, was at home. Rupert's always once the office door is shut, that's it. But he was employed, so it's slightly different. He could shut the door. So I'm trying to get out of that mindset and into this is
work time, this is home time.
Yeah, it is difficult.
My other bit of advice is get a dog. Because actually, if all else, the fact that I walk the dog first thing in the morning, and actually it's possibly the most important part of my day, because I wake up in the morning with all these thoughts going on in my head, but actually by the time I've walked the dog, I've taken those thoughts and I've distilled them down to a plan, which means that I know what I have to do during the day. I've got a sequence of actions, but I'd fully recommend that, and then go and buy a bike. That's my secret for success.
Get a dog and leave the house.
Yes.
It's a great excuse. If you're fed up with the other person, I'm taking the dog for a walk.
I swear that's why golf's popular.
Yeah.
I've got to go to the course to be alone for 6 hours.
Yeah.
It's not an accident. Focusing it back onto business just briefly, you guys have been exposed to a lot of different companies of a lot of different sizes and scales. I appreciate there's never a silver bullet, but is there a really common mistake that you see owners and founders or companies make, which could be relatively easily fixed?
The first thing is they don't know their numbers, back to what we've been talking about already. They actually don't know where the money is. So many businesses, when you talk to them, they only know how much money they've got by looking at their bank statement. So there's no attempt to predict what's going to happen in the future. And if you think about it, if you're going to invest a lot in money in marketing to build your customer base, you've also got to build your business up at a suitable rate to deal with the additional customers. So the two are very tightly linked together. I think also what we see a lot is the business leader, business owner, expects everybody to do it the way they've done it, particularly if you're in the trades or something. Actually, when I was, when I was working the lathes, this is how I would do it. They expect whoever's doing the operator now to do it exactly the same way. There may be a better way to do it. So you've got to tell people what you need. So be very focused on what you expect them to do, but give them some leeway to work out how to do it themselves. Then I think the biggest foundation to all businesses is good communication. Everything else, so you actually, we know what we're trying to achieve. We know how we're going to achieve it. We know how we're going to work together. But actually, if you're not communicating effectively, everything else will fall to bits.
So printed on your silver bullet, on one side we have finance, and on the other side we have communication.
That works quite well.
Yeah, well done.
No, so we'd like to thank you both for this morning and your time. Is there anything particular else that you'd like to mention or tell people about as we finish up, particularly, or just let them know how to get in contact with you both?
Well, we've got the website, which is www. I don't know if you need to say that anymore.
We can put it in.
Yeah.
bluedragonflygroup.co.uk. We are both on LinkedIn, quite easy to find on LinkedIn. And our phone number, I don't know what our phone number is. So
our phone number is 01572 497 030. I can't believe you don't know that.
I don't know mine either. I know my mobile.
I know my mobile. I know his mobile.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you for having us on.
Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of the Business Growth Show. Thanks for joining us.
We hope it gave you some ideas or inspiration that you can take away and use in your own business.
Don't forget to drop us a like, a follow, and a rating, and hopefully we'll see you soon for the next episode.